Welcome everyone, wherever you're calling in from, whether from Asia or from America or from Africa here. Welcome to Data Platform Virtual Summit 2021. And I'm one of the speakers that will be speaking on the remote work and certification and under the category of professional development. My name is Oluwaseyi Oluwawumiju. I'm the CEO of Covenant Technology. I'm also an MVP on Office Apps and Services. I'm a Microsoft certified trainer. I also lead the team of Microsoft trainers, regional lead in Nigeria, especially for the West African category. I'm an IT consultant, also a trainer with several years of experience, and I've also several books on Amazon, and also I've done several speaking roles across the world. I'm a father of 4 kids, and I love traveling. You can see one of my picture captured there where I was freezing in the cold of the US. And I love listening to gospel song and also going to church fellowship. You can also follow me on my LinkedIn and also on my Twitter account. Why are we here today? Definitely, I know we are all here to look at this professional development track on remote work and also how to blend it with our certification, especially the Microsoft role-based certification. So today agenda, our target is to look at COVID-19 and what has it brought in. It has enhanced digitalization for now. We're also going to look at remote work generally, look at the new dive. We are also going to spend time to look at various role-based certification that can enhance our productivity, our ability to get job, and our ability to see more of our productivity enhancement. Now, I also give room for question and answer for people that have questions to be able to ask me. Now, let's look at COVID-19. COVID-19 started way back in 2020, as early as early 2020 when the virus was discovered in China. And that has actually brought about various changes that emancipated from staying at home, government cutting off from every activity, ensuring that nothing physical moves around, and making people to stay safe is one of the critical missions that most countries across the world was doing. So let's look at what has happened. Now, before now, the world has actually changed in terms of the digital artifacts, running it from the digital estate that we are used to the on-prem remote environment, and looking at what we have today. The cloud involvement has also bring change across all our digital estate. People are gradually moving from the on-prem environment to the cloud. But when COVID-19 hit the world, it brought about an instantaneous turnaround to digitalization. What do I mean about that? What I mean is that that change always demarcated the way we do things in terms of IT provision, in terms of professionalism, in terms of the way we work and we deliver our services. Everything from the looking at the business lateral and the horizontal, we are able to identify change across several industries, from the government to the private sector to every arms of business. Totally was changed. COVID-19 brought that instantaneous change. Now, we now know that we have the new way and the old way. Now, looking at that, most people were just shocked, just like what I'm displaying here of a worker that just got to the office and got a welcome mail back after several months staying at home. And there is a term here called new norm. What do your management mean by new norm? What does the government mean that from now on there is a flavor across business sector? People can work from home, people can decide to come to the office. Now, for you to decide to come to the office, you must follow certain procedure. Getting vaccinated, using nose mask, having your hand always clean with standardized sanitizers, etc. All these were the basic thing. So each company adopted this new norm. Now the question here, what is the new norm? And that brought about global concern all across the world, from each of the continents, running from the America, North America to South America to Europe to Africa to South Asia to North Asia. Every segment of the world were all following certain procedure. What is that procedure? Finding a way to combat the menace of COVID-19, finding a way to continue their business and ensure that people can go back to their business. Government was stranded for some months in 2020, and that has brought down productivity and enhanced poverty across several groups. Now, this collective effort is pointing at one thing: digital fitness, ability to shift towards making a digital culture, making analysis about change and concern that the world has. Now, this brought me to a point to look at how we need to stand. How do we need to work at this time? The new norm. What does it stand for? Now we have seen COVID, we are the post-COVID. Now we have different strands of COVID, the first wave, the second wave. We have now the third wave, and people are even saying there's going to be a fourth wave. Where are we going? The pointer here is that for every establishment, for every individual, for anyone that wants to be very, very relevant at this time, you must upskill yourself. You must be able to digitalize your workforce, ensure that people have the right tool, the right skill to be able to meet up in this age of total change and digital shift. This say digitalization is very imperative. Now, the New World Order now has three pillars. One, this has over enhanced the use and the phenomenon called remote working. People working from areas that naturally would not be able to work in the past. People being able to work and also live in the same home and being able to deliver. And statistics have said over 18 months that they have noticed that in the business arena, people have been able to deliver 80% of their deliverable even when they are at home. Now, it brings us to the question that if we can have this kind of landslide of productivity at this point when people are working from home, what will be the future? Now, several people have started adopting what we call an hybrid scenario. Now, apart from that, the second pillar we're going to look at is that every employee needs to provide an environment for productivity. That is creating tools that be able to be able to enhance productivity, enhance people to have relevance to what they do. And finally, how do we justify that you are relevant to this system? You must upskill yourself. You must have something to show that you are relevant. Now, please, I want you to follow me at this time. Now, we now need to look at this basic term I've been saying: remote work. Remote work, a new dive. Now, let's look at remote work. Remote work generally has three standard view to it. One, you must be able to create an environment within your home where you can have set up your workspace, and that can be virtual, and the virtual workspace and also that also can also be the physical. Now, apart from that, after you have set yourself up at home and you have everything necessary to be able to communicate with the outside world, with your colleague, with business article around, you must also be able to set up and connect with your colleague. How do you connect with your colleague? Several devices have been implemented by businesses like Team, like um, Zoom, to be able to communicate, to be able to collaborate, to be able to share files. Apart from that, you now need to look at your timing. How do I manage myself at home? My timeline, my workspace. I must be able to create a boundary where I'll be able to work as well as integrate with my family. Now, it brings me to a pressing need here where I need to look at how do I set up my workspace. For the physical workspace, all I need to do is to find a serene area where I can have a chair or table where I have a chair that is good for me to be able to work, and my system must be in a very serene place, and I must be able to have equipment like camera that or video that will be able to be used communicate with outside world. Then I need to now set up the virtual workspace. Now, the virtual workspace, which is the critical area of every remote worker or every remote work, it will be to set up an area, and you must have an internet facility that will be able to enhance you in this strive. Now, I always put this as a caveat that whenever you are setting up your virtual workspace, you should not forget that you also need to set up your mobile environment. Now, digital estate, as I said earlier, was was changing as early as 2018, and as it was going on, there was a shift from the on-prem physical emphasis to the cloud technology, and also the mobility is also a subject that could not be removed from from the ecosystem. Now, with mobility, you can have the same experience you are having on your laptop with your mobile devices. And with the influence of several smartphones that is all around, you can easily have access to those files. So, as you are setting up your virtual workspace, you must also set up your mobile environment where you can store your file, and at every point in time you can have access to your devices, to your document, to your information. Now, we also need to look at some other things that cannot be removed from the equation. One of them is your video. There are several cameras outside there, and thank God for Surface. You have a Surface like mine. It has a very good camera that can also meet up to the new age digitalization. Then you also need to set up your environment. There are so many solutions out there that you can use to reduce the noise. And Kim is coming with a solution that can neutralize noise. I use Crips for example. With Crips, I can attach and configure my microphone, and I can enable it to remove any surrounding sound. Then I need to create a camera framing where I can have a good angle where I can create and have my video shot. Now, now I've set up myself. The first step is to be able to set up my workspace. The second step is to connect with people. How do I connect outside my environment, outside my home? Now, this is where the tools comes, like Team, like like Zoom, for example. But our concentration here is Microsoft Team, which will enhance us to be able to communicate, ensure that we can talk, and with the team, the evolving rate at which team is working is that it makes also space for fun, using emojis, using gifs, using devices to be able to have a conversation as a real life scenario. Then I also need to have a virtual workspace, a virtual colors that coolers that can always be. So as you are setting up this, communication is key. Another key when you are setting up your workspace in terms of connect with others is how do I collaborate? We are still going to rely on Teams and also other applications that are tied to it like OneDrive and etc. Now, Digital estate has changed, and we now look at digital events. We need to create an environment where we can easily collaborate in terms of meeting, in terms of sharing content, and also using security that's in place. Now, that will not remove the fact that as you are setting up this, you must also ensure that you follow inclusion. Inclusion, it means having etiquette, ethics that you can follow when it comes to virtual remote work, which include the the respect you need to give people, the ability to pause when you want to speak and to kill the mic, the ability to what, monitor your meeting chat, etc. All these things is necessary as part of the psyche and the knowledge shift that every remote worker needs to have. Now, another thing you need to consider is accessibility. Now, in this era where we are all using virtual network, you don't know which other side that person might be physically impaired in terms of eyesight, in terms of hearing, and you need to always turn on your live capture. You ensure that your content is accessible to people that are less privileged, and this understanding aids in order to enhance yourself and equip yourself for remote work. Now, finally, you need to manage your time. Share your schedule. Ensure your schedule is shared within your establishment, within your people, within your workspace. Make sure that people see what they'll start at a time. And one thing I need to emphasize here when you are considering looking at remote work is to set up boundary. Now, we know in most time physical office, we have our time between 7 to 8 or to 5 p.m. That's 8 hours of work. Because when you are home, there's no limit to when you work, but you need to set up boundary. You need to look at your health. You need to look at when you bond with your family. I told you I'm a father of 4 kids, and most time I can tell you that my boy will just come while I'm having a video conference, and he will just stay behind me and say, "Daddy, that kind of that kind of bond can only happen when you are infused properly. You set up your boundary. You know the time you need to integrate with them. You know the time you need to talk to them. You know the time you need to play with them. All these are properly enhanced with this remote work. Now, we have seen this now. Let's now look at role-based certification. Now, we have talked of remote work. We have seen the advantage of remote work. We have seen how to set up remote work. Let's now look down the lane. What is Microsoft? Now, when I talk of certification, I'm also mentioning one fact. The fact here is that as far as you are concerned, people want to see what makes you credible for this work. People want to see what makes you reliable or essentially ready to be given this task. And one of them is the certification you have. Now, from statistics, I'll go down from 2018 to 2019 when several establishments and institutions tried to do a survey. One of them was Perseverance. It said 91% of certified IT says they want to know what you have in order to give you a job. Now, and this has been overemphasized in the digital era, which is a pointer to remote work. Now, another survey was done in 2019, now this time by Global Knowledge. Now, Global Knowledge noticed that 52% says that enterprise is more sorted after when you have certification. Now, the same vein, Global Knowledge also did a statistics that look at decision making. And in decision making, they emphasize that certified employee provide added value when they have their certification. Now, let's look at the segment of role-based certification. Now, Microsoft segmented each job in terms of the role it comes with. One of those roles is developers, the second is administrators, the third is solution architect, the data engineer, the data scientist, the AI. Now, in terms of the new trend, which is cognitive service, artificial intelligence, we need to have people that have such role, and they need certification to be able to have access to this kind of job. We talk of DevOps engineer, which is the new trend in terms of development, where you can create your developments using CI/CD process, where I can have continuous production of my application irrespective of the time and the segment I want to produce it. Now, security is also essential. We need to have people with a role, with a job role that can easily fit in to protect our digital artifact, whether they are on-prem, whether they are moving, whether they are data, they are, all these things needs to be considered. Also in terms of finances, KRP, human resources, we need to also have roles. So I'm going to take you to a dive now. We will see several segments of this role that Microsoft had put. Now, role-based certification part is actually divided into three, with an addition of the security we just added earlier, late last year. Now, the certification part has updated in August. Now, one thing I want to make a disclaimer here, that this can change at any time because of the rapid change that comes from digitalization and development. Now, let's look at Azure. One of this role part is Azure, the other is Microsoft 365, the third is Dynamic 365. Now, the fourth is Power Platform. Now, each of this role, each of this solution has various parts, and each of those parts will encourage and increase the visibility to that person that has it. Now, in the role-based certification part, we have it segmented into fundamental. Now, after the fundamental, we have also the role-based solution, then we have the specialty, and finally, we have the segment of the expert. Now, in terms of the fundamental. Now, the fundamental is for people or users that actually are very at entry level. They want to first get into the first 2 years, they are just getting into IT to be able to have the basic of what they need to do. Each of them need to go through several tracks called the fundamental courses. Now, these courses give you a certification that you can even vouch for and tell your employee, especially in the remote environment, that you have actually gone through this certification. Now, under it, it is spread across different solution line, the Azure, also the M365, the Dynamic 365, and finally to the Power Platform. Now, let's look at the fundamental. The fundamental gives you basic knowledge across M365, across Dynamic 365, across even the Azure fundamental, which also have been extended to Power Platform, the CRP on Dynamics, the Azure Data Fundamental for those that just entering the data science or data engineers. Now, we also have the specialists. The specialist certification are people that specialize in certain category of solution, which include SAP on the workload. Sometimes you might want to be a desktop specialty that you'll be rolling out desktop and Office Windows 20, Windows 10. And finally, the Azure IoT for those in the IoT segment who wants to look at, because the smart environment is evolving, and because it's evolving, several houses are now using equipment that are connected through the cloud technology, and you need to manage it. You need people that will have that role in order to manage it. Now, the security part is actually just introduced, and this is segmented into three, which includes security, compliance, and identity. Identity for your identity, compliance for being able to compete with standard rules and follow those rules across every digital asset in the cloud environment. Now, after looking at this, now let's go down to each of these role-based certifications. Now, if I want to be an AI expert, I want to be able to be relevant in the remote, to have job remotely, because now you can work from anywhere, and that can give you a chance to be employed. You write the AI Administrator Associate, where you have your certificate as an AI engineer. You can also enroll as an Azure Administrator, where you can actually be one of those ones that will be managing Azure in the cloud. You can also become under M365, which is the PaaS area or the SaaS area, where you can actually manage the messaging, and you can have messaging administrator. Then you can also be a modern desktop administrator associate certificate, where you can have certification to enhance that potential capability. Then you can have security administrator, where you can also be a security expert under the Azure spam, under the M365, that at every time you'll be able to manage M365. Then you have the team M365 team administrator. Now, this particular administrator actually manage all the office apps, because M365 is a SaaS solution. It cuts across several solutions and applications, and mentioning like Planner, like Teams, like Exchange, etc. Because of this vast knowledge and vast application, an administration should be able to manage it, and that keep you a way by which you can see and have access to all this. Then you can have the team administrator. We actually serve for the team, where you can manage the team, and certification in this line give you an advantage to be someone that can manage the tool that we use in the digital era. Then apart from that, we're looking at security. If you want to be a administrator that looks after their information protection, several tools that we use it for identity and access. Also, you can be a security engineer, specifically managing the security of your enterprise when it comes to digital estate. Then you can also be an analyst that can look at security operation, ensure those operation is working. Now there's a new trend now, which is the Azure Stack. Azure Stack is a way by which you can actually create and manage your Azure Stack solution and environment via your on-prem environment. Now, Azure Stack is extending Azure solution via the Azure operating system, and that can help you to have access and being able to be realistic with this. That means we are prompting us developing an hybrid environment. Now, apart from that, you might want to be an expert. Now, when you want to be an expert as an administrator, you can either be an expert via as a desktop, or a security person, or a messaging person, or a team administrator. And once you write a certificate to make you an expert, that gives you a leverage to be at the top. Now, these are actually people that can manage both, that they are looking at your understanding of the technology, the experience curve you have looked at, and most times the pointer is between 4 to 5 years as an expert above. Then another role that is critical is a solution architect, someone that stands at the point where he can develop solution, ensure that solution work for your business, whether it's a small business environment or any form of environment. All these are actually being used. Now, in terms of it, there are several solution architects. Can be an Azure solution architect, can be a solution architect for Dynamics. You can also be a combination of Power Platform and Dynamics solution architect. You can also be a solution architect for only Dynamics. Another environment, another certification, another role that's critical in our digital environment, in the cloud first, mobile first environment, is the Azure developers. These are people that can develop solutions. Now, Azure developer you can also have a certification and a role-based direction towards it in terms of For Azure, developing application on Azure. You can develop application on Dynamics 365, which include the finance and operation. You can also become a developer that looked at the area of M365, looking at solution and application that you can run on M365 application. Finally, you can look at developing solution that can work on low code, no code solution using Power Platform. Now, there are other areas that we're going to quickly look at. One is, this is a data summit. One certification that is very key for most of us here is to be able to either become a data engineer. Now, for you to have to be known as a data engineer, you need to showcase something. You need certification that is blended with your experience to show that you are an Azure data engineer. You can create data, and you can also be a scientist. You can analyze data, ensure those data are actually migrated using the tools and the environment necessary. Now, you can also look at the DevOps engineer expert. Now, this DevOps engineer expert is actually developed in order to ensure that most people that develop solutions can usually follow the standard. Now, for you to stand at that pinnacle, you must have something to show. Now, apart from the certification, because the role-based certification is a marriage of both your experience and also the certification you are badging. Now, that's combine these two gives you a prompt emphasis and advantage to an employer that you can stand the time and the risk. Now, finally, in the dynamic sector, there are several certifications that can make you edge out for employer to employ you in a remote environment. One is Dynamics 365 Customer Functional Consultancy, the Field Service Functional Consultancy, the Finance Functional Consultancy, the Manufacturing Functional Consultancy, Marketing Functional Consultancy, and Sales Functional Consultancy. And you can also diverge into Supply Chain Management Consultancy, as well as looking at the new Business Central. Now, Business Central is where Microsoft is trying to look at ways of reducing costs and ensuring people from a low-end environment, small business environment, to be able to have access to this ERP, CRP solution. Now, you can be someone that can work as a consultant in that area. Now, we have other consultancies running toward the Power Platform Functional Consultancy, and also, finally, I don't know whether there's any question that you want to ask me. You can quickly ask the question. We have just 5 more minutes before I round up.